MacVoices TV at Macworld 2010 is sponsored by Smile on My Mac, the makers of great productivity software like PDF Pen, Text Expander, and Disk Label. Visit them at smileonmymac.com.
How many of you guys have sore feet? All right, his name is Grant Dahlke. He's from OWC, and he's graciously volunteered to rub anybody's feet that's sore after this is over. I got that right?
You got it right.
All right, we're good. My name is Tim Robertson. I am well, you'd probably want to with her.
I'm in Groundhog
Yeah.
right now, the auction.
My name is Tim Robertson. I'm the host of OWC Radio. It's the official podcast for Otherworld Computing. Now, this isn't a big infomercial. We're not going to try to sell you a product, but there's a really cool thing that I wanted Grant to come up on stage and talk about today before we get on with the show. This show is going to be a celebration of Macworld. I've got a lot of friends out here in the audience. I see you over there, Victor. And I want to ask them, and Chuck, and Bill Palmer from BeatWeek magazine, what they thought of the show. But more importantly, I want to ask you guys what you guys thought of the show, what you saw out there was cool, and if you're coming back next year. But Grant, tell us about Otherworld Computing, what you guys are doing over there today.
Well, the big news here at the show is our SSD drive. It's the fastest solid-state drive on the market.
I won't be mad if you take the mic from me and hold it.
It's the fastest SSD on the market, and if you haven't had the chance to come over and see how it compares to a standard notebook drive, before you leave the show today, come on over. We have a test drive set up where it's blistering fast. It'll load 5 apps and reboot in 32 seconds, and if you watched the video that Tim and I have created, the standard notebook does it in close to 2 minutes. So it's really like a modern-day processor upgrade when you put this SSD in your MacBook, MacBook Pro, and even a Mac Pro.
Grant, did you give everyone a little helicopter?
I did. You know.
Does anybody not have a helicopter? You don't get a helicopter. So this is Macworld 2010. This is the last show on the main stage today. After this is over, go home because the show's closed. So I'm curious, how many people were here for just one day? How many for 2 days? How many was here the whole time? Most of you guys then were here for the entire show. I think that's really impressive, especially seeing it's only one of the hallways this year. But I was hoping that Paul Kent was here because Paul Kent from IDG is he here? Where is he? Hey, come on up here, Paul. Geez. Please give Paul Kent a round of applause. If it wasn't for this man, Macworld Expo would not have happened this year. Paul, I have to ask you, I want your honest opinion. What was your favorite thing this year at the Macworld Expo? And you're going to take the mic from me. I'm not going to hold it for you.
Well, the show, there's too many good points to pick just one out. I think the best moment was on Thursday morning when that stream started down the escalator and we knew what was going to happen here. That was going to be pretty cool. So, you know, Tim, you've been a great supporter, giving me a lot of advice, you know, as many people have. So the biggest thing here is this is a win for everybody. I think people who come to Macworld love Macworld. They want to come to Macworld. They enjoy coming here. You guys take your time, spend your money to come here, and we sincerely appreciate it. But the win that Macworld has now made that transition to being a show all about all the things you can do with your Apple products, that's the huge win. It's not a question of will Apple, won't Apple, you know, will we have another show, won't we have another show. It's all right now about what is the cool stuff being announced here, what is the cool stuff that you guys can see and buy, and that's the big win. You know, we're back to talking just about great products, and that's the best thing that we could have accomplished.
You know, to me, Macworld has never been about Apple. It's always been about the Apple ecosystem that surrounds the Macintosh, and more importantly, the Macintosh community. So I'm so happy that everyone's here, really. I couldn't be happier myself, except for that guy right there. No, I'm kidding. So I want to get some opinions from you guys out there, and I want to start with this guy over here named Bill Palmer. By the way, Bill Palmer, he changed the name of his long-running publication. That's a very brave thing to do. Come over here, Bill. It was iProng magazine. Oh, thank you. And Bill changed it to BeatWeek magazine. So a little bit, tell us about BeatWeek magazine and what you're doing here at the expo.
Well, you know, we've been covering the iPod since 2004 and the iPhone for as long as it existed, and we started dabbling in other things a few years ago: music, podcasting, social media, Mac, laptops, all the stuff we like. And at some point we realized we weren't dabbling anymore, so we thought, well, we're going to keep that iPod and iPhone focus as strong as ever, but we've become a well-rounded publication, so let's have a name that's not limited to just people who are obsessed with the letter I, but people who use products with the letter I as a matter of course.
Keep going.
Well, what do you want me to say? Oh, what are we doing here? We're here to see. We came here to see you.
Okay.
I just got off a plane. No, we came to see the iPhone and iPod products for the most part. Stuff that's debuting. Sometimes these things don't ship, but readers back home still like to know about what's coming, so they know whether to buy what's on the market now or wait a month for the next great thing that's just about ready to ship. And I thought the App Pavilion was the highlight here. A lot of iPhone batteries, some innovation there, TV tied into a couple of them in different ways. But the App Pavilion, it was so annoying because you couldn't get to anyone. And I was really tempted to be kind of ticked off by that on the first day. I'm like, you can't get up there, it's like being in a Lollapalooza mosh pit. I'm not 20 anymore. And then I got almost near the end of the first day, I'm like, wait a minute, this is a good thing. This place is packed.
It's packed.
Yeah, what do you mean? I mean, what do you mean there's any trouble? This is, I think it's a better show than last year.
Yeah.
And that's nothing against Apple. It's just Apple didn't do anything last year when they were here. I hope I can. Hi, Steve. Apple was. People came to see Apple, and Apple contributed nothing. A boring keynote, a booth that had nothing new, and the people who came here this year came because they knew they wanted to see other Apple-related things, and so it's the right audience for the right show. And the moves they made, the February, the Saturday, the App Pavilion, the little 2-inch wide booth for the App Pavilion for struggling developers who can't afford to do something like OWC has, who's been around for 20 years. Most of it's worked. So I can't wait till next year. I don't know about you.
Oh, I can't wait for it. I'm ready to start next week. My wife's not, but I am. So I'm kind of curious on how many people are planning on coming next year. I'm going to say a lot of them. Does anybody know the dates for next year? It's January 25 through the 29th. So mark that on your calendar, folks. I'm going to be here. I know a whole bunch of these people are. I'm looking around. I'm kind of curious what you think of the expo. You, right here. What's your name?
Bill.
All right, Bill. Ooh, martial arts. I'm standing back. He might kick me or something. Bill, what'd you think of the expo and what'd you really like out here today?
Well, I came not knowing what to expect. It was just, a lot of emphasis was put on the iPod and the iPhone, and that was okay. But I saw a lot of things that I could use in my business, and that was it was a lot of reproductive things. They weren't as expensive as I thought they would.
Macs are not as expensive as most people, and they used to be way more expensive. They're really not now. It's very affordable to get into the Macintosh.
Yeah, and so I saw that when I say reproductive things like the membership cards, we use a lot of that at our schools, and the DVDs and the CD reproduction, because that's what we do, techniques and all, and reproduce them in massive for the 4 schools. And so I was excited about those things.
There was a lot of stuff that I saw on the showroom floor. Probably the best thing was Dave Hamilton's Dreamy Eyes. See, I got you after all, didn't I, Dave? One of the things that I really like to do when I'm on the showroom floor is find developers that I've never seen before, and there was quite a few of them. And I'm kind of curious how many of these developers out here are going to be developing for the iPad. I personally am buying an iPad. I'm wondering how many of you guys are buying an iPad? You're not going to buy an iPad? You're going to buy one? You're just too tired. You're like, I'm not raising my hand. He's going to buy one. You're going to buy one. So you're his son. Okay, I'm going to ask you then. What do you want an iPad for? What's the big use?
I'm going to wait and see what comes out, and I was kind of disappointed today that they didn't have one on hand to show us basically what's going to be available.
It's kind of early. I mean, they're still making these. There's probably some bugs still they need to work out, and they're not going to put a working model until they know it's going to be 100% ready to go. But from all the early reports, it's fast, it's super responsive. It's going to run all the iPod. You're going to get coughed on. It's okay. It's an expo. It's going to be fast, super responsive. It's going to run all the iPhone software. Is that the big draw to you, or is it the physical unit itself?
I think it's the physical unit itself. I mean, I'll probably use it as a reader and be able to download books and things. And we'll have to see what apps and stuff what they develop for it. I'm not exactly sure what to expect.
Developers are going to have a field day with this thing, I think. I'm kind of curious on Does anybody think that this is going to turn in the iPad Expo next year? How many vendors do you think are going to be here next year that's going to have iPad cases? How many of you guys were here for the big iPod craze when this entire hall was nothing but iPad cases, or I'm sorry, iPhone cases and iPod cases, and everything's a case and a sticker, and I don't see that this year, and I'm kind of glad. There's a place for that, but I don't think it should be at an expo. The expo should be about the software developers. Great companies like iFi, I'm going to say Otherworld Computing. I got to get the plug in there. Peter Cohen, come here. Peter Cohen from the Loop. Loop Insight. What? Angry Mac Bastards. Ow! Ow! Oh! Ow. So Peter Cohen, turn around, get you on video. So what did you find on the showroom floor this year, and what do you think about Macworld this year?
What did I find on the showroom floor that really impressed me? Well, okay, let me disclaim this because I was a judge for their contest, their development contest, but Game Salad has some really cool technology. Game Salad is a company that has tools that lets people who aren't developers make games for the iPhone and other platforms and the web and publish them accordingly. These games are already available on the iPhone, but you don't necessarily need a lot of development skill to do it. And the games are very varied and really interesting. So, being a game guy, that really excited me. And speaking of which, Telltale Games, their presence on the show floor is great because they're a new presence in the Mac market at a time when we've seen a lot of pullbacks. So that's good too.
You've always been known as the Mac gaming god for years and years, and you kind of still are, I think. Well, you're a god to me anyways. Do you think the future of Mac gaming is big or not so big?
I'd say the future of Mac gaming is probably consistent with what it is right now. I don't see it growing in huge amounts simply because it doesn't seem like people who buy Macs buy as much software, third-party software, as they used to.
But now you look at the iPhone and you look at the upcoming iPad, that seems to be changing a lot. A lot more people are starting to get into third-party software.
Well, sure. I mean, the availability of apps on the iPhone has made a lot of people a lot of money in that community, for sure.
Made a lot of people poor, too, like me.
And me.
Thanks, Peter. You're going to cover the expo next year, of course.
Of course, it wouldn't be a party without me, so.
I totally agree. Victor, come here. Victor, a typical Mac user, one of my favorite podcasts, typical Mac user podcast, but you also have a photography show now.
Yeah, typical Shutterbug for those people who are just like me, trying to get passionate about photography. You have a point and shoot. You don't need a $5,000 camera. You just want to shoot and learn. And so I started it with the same principles that when I switched. I want to learn, come along for the ride, and I'll make some mistakes, so will you. So what?
I was publishing My Mac magazine. I started it in 1995, and I just recently retired to do the OWC thing. So I've been in this industry for a long time in the Mac market, and I know a lot of people, I know a lot of developers, but you're recently a convert to the Mac within the last 3 years. What's it like coming in after the bad days? I mean, you weren't here like I was for the bad days, 97, 96. It was bleak. When you came in, it was all roses, and everything was great. Do you expect that to continue? We're in a recession, remember? Apple shouldn't be selling very many computers because they cost more, remember?
Well, I think Apple does such a good job of innovating that it makes us, stand up and take a look. And the community aspect to me just has meant the world. I started with typical PC user, and when I switched, a large reason was I never found a community in the PC world. Here, there was a group of people that were willing to teach me. I mean, I was the guy who thought, Apple people are snobs. Apple software is expensive. I mean, I was that guy, And then thanks to Adam Christensen, who kind of showed me the way, I was willing to dip my toe in the water. And then I found people that were willing to embrace me, teach me, show me the way. The first Macworld, tell me what the faux pas were. And that's why I'm here, and that's why I stick around, because I like what we together do, so.
It's kind of fun for me because my very first Macworld Expo I got to attend because I'm broke most of the time and I couldn't go. And I live in Michigan, so there were always a long flight. Was the Macworld Expo 2000. It was the first time that they showed Mac OS X. and it scared the crap out of me because I was an IT manager and I didn't want to relearn everything. But it was a new beginning for the Macworld Expo, for me anyways. This Expo this year, 2010, I think is another new beginning.
Yeah, I think it is a new beginning, and I've seen products that I would not have normally have seen. I've seen speakers that, Kevin Smith spoke, and Kevin Smith dropped the F-bomb. Lots. I would have never have seen that before in Macworld. Not because I love cursing, but because the spirit that was brought along with that for the creatives and stuff, it was great. So I got to see things at this Macworld that weren't just all centered around the big apple in the sky. It was centered around the community, around new products, around finding that unique thing. Even if it wasn't sexy, one of my highlights of the show is right there, this iTouch gloves. A product that is not sexy, that is not electronics, a product that they've taken fibers and they've made them so that if you live in Michigan, I live in Southern California, I could really care less, but in Michigan, that's huge. And this is a technology that isn't sexy, but if you need it, there it is. To me, that's
I gotta say, don't lick your iPhone in the cold weather. It's not good. Thanks, Victor. All right, come here, Chuck. I think one of the most respected guys podcasting today, Chuck Joyner. I keep saying that, and it embarrasses him every time. Hey, thanks for coming up, by the way. I appreciate it. Chuck, you've been doing this for a lot of years. I'll say that. Enough. Well, you're... He started when he was 3, and he's only 22 now. What's your impression of the Macworld Expo, and what do you think the future holds for this event?
Interesting question. I mean, first of all, this expo has been spectacular. In spite of all the doom and gloom that we saw out there, which was ridiculous, all the uncertainty, which was probably legitimate, this has been a success by any measure. The future, I'm a business guy, so I look at this as it's got to be a going concern for IDG. As much as we all talk about community and it means that much to all of us, it's got to make sense for them, and that means it's got to make sense for the vendors, because even at the prices they charge, us, we're not the ones that are putting this on. The vendors paying for the booths are. So it's an interesting ecosystem, and you're not going to come without the vendors. They're not going to come without you. The vendors want the media. The media's not going to come without the vendors. It's crazy. So I think that looking around, every vendor I've talked to has been really, really pleased. I haven't heard anyone that wasn't.
Are you pleased, Grant?
Are you pleased, Grant? Yeah. I think that, in fact, I've talked to a number that have already re-signed up, which is really, really nice to see. And I think it's kind of our mission to go out and say, this was a success, and if you weren't here as an exhibitor, we missed you. You missed an opportunity to connect with us. We will be there next year. We hope to see you there next year. And that supports the whole ecosystem. Because as someone who came and tried to cover the show, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to add as much value by giving the coverage that they want. That's my part of the ecosystem. And that's the way I see it. I think there's no reason that we shouldn't see a Macworld 2011 that is bigger and better than this one.
All right, let's talk about MacVoices a little bit, because you're not just doing audio, you're doing video. Now, it's really hard to shoot video here, go in the press room, edit it, and get it posted. So a lot of the stuff that you're filming now is going to show up in the weeks to come. What can the viewers look forward to in the weeks to come from you?
They can look forward to seeing principally interviews with a lot of the cool stuff here. I'd love to tell you I got to every booth with every cool thing. It's just not possible. So we tried to hit the ones where I thought they were interesting. And of course, I'm famous for saying what interests me may not interest him at all. But we got a lot of coverage of them talking about it. We try to make it almost a virtual Macworld, where we stop by, we have a 5 to 15 minute conversation with someone, let them show us what they do, and then we move on so they can move on and talk to other people. We don't do an in-depth situation. We've also been talking to some of the personalities in the Mac community as well, because those are the people you hear from throughout the year. You read their stuff. We want to put a face with that and let you see what they're really like in this environment. So you can check out MacVoices TV, MacVoices.tv, excuse me, for all of that. And you're right, editing it on the fly, it's better to get the content here, go to the parties at night, get 2 hours of sleep, and come down and do it again the next day.
It's because you're a party animal, Chuck. We know you're a party animal. Come on. No, and I think it's hard for us as content providers. We usually work in a vacuum. We're in an office in front of our computer and we're producing content. But then we come to an event like this and you see the ecosystem that we're representing when we're doing our shows. When we're talking, there's nobody there in front of us. We come here and you have people come up to you and say, hey, I really like your show. Thanks a lot. does that mean a lot to you, or does it kind of freak you out a little bit that you're not talking into a vacuum?
Yeah, both. I mean, you see the download numbers, you get emails from people, you trade those things, but it is a little bit different to have someone come up. In fact, we were having lunch and someone saw the tag and came up and said, hey, I really love your show. We're a strange bunch because you're right, we sit alone in a room a lot of times, and it's sometimes surprising to find out that some of you are really listening. Thank you. We appreciate it. We appreciate it. So yeah, this is just a blast. There's one other point, though, that I want to make, and it goes to the community part. I haven't shaken hands with many people here this week. I've gotten a lot of hugs and given a lot of hugs. That's what this place is like. That's what this community is like. Every year, you see people, and you're so glad to see them. You spend a few days, and then we all go back to whatever it is we do, looking forward to the next year. So it is something magic. People that aren't part of the community think we're insane. I take my vacation from my office to come here and spend 3 days in a hole in the ground in San Francisco, and I can't wait to do it again next year.
My wife doesn't really prefer me leaving for a week to come here. I've got 4 kids, and the little one is little Mac Daddy, by the way. We even have a shirt for him. And they're all Mac users. It amazes me that I have a 6-year-old daughter who can sit in front of a Macintosh and just start using it. She has no fear. When I was 6 years old, well, there really wasn't computers really then. But still, there's no way I would have embraced that technology. I think with this new iPad, my 2-year-old who's already punching my iPhone. How many of you have little kids and an iPhone? A couple of you? I bet, do you let him touch it? No? Come on. Oh, he does, doesn't he? And he loves it, and he already knows. I have a 2-year-old son, just turned 2. Chuck already knows how to flick to the next picture. And that's the power and the ease of use that Apple technology has given us. And when I hear, like Victor was saying, PC users tend to think, oh, there's an arrogance with Mac users. I don't think I've never seen arrogant Mac users. Well, maybe during the whole evangelist thing, but that's a different story. I don't see it anymore. I see it as not even just the creative type. That was the stereotype for a long time. Mac user, the creatives, and they do graphic design, and I don't think that's true. I think Mac users are just like anybody else, except we maybe have good taste.
Yeah, there's that. I think there's one other thing, though, because I know I experience it occasionally. I think we get frustrated. We get frustrated with those characterizations that have been around for so long that we're still guilty of. In fact, I ran into it a couple weeks ago. Somebody said, oh, you have a Mac. Well, that's just for people that, draw pictures and do that Photoshop thing. And, that's when I guess we do sound arrogant because you can't help it. You have to look at them and say, no, you're wrong. Every single productivity app you can name is on a Mac that you're going to ever need. And so that may come across as arrogance. If it does, maybe we need to apologize. But we're out there correcting ignorance and misunderstandings. Incoming.
Duck and cover. Dave Hamilton does one of my favorite podcasts. Come up here, Dave. Thanks, Chuck. I appreciate it. Thanks for videotaping. I really appreciate it. I don't know how you have enough hours in the day, Dave Hamilton, to come up with all the answers to the wide variety of technical questions, from hardware to software to iPhone related to cloud computing, but you always come up with the answers. You are magic. How do you do that?
Well, see, the beautiful thing is we get the questions in, right? People email them to us, and then we get to research the answer before the show. But it takes time, right? See, so what we do is we don't take that time. We just answer on the show. But the nice part is they're not there to tell us that our answers are completely made up, and we sound really smart, and then we move on. And no, we do take time to research and answer those questions. And, we do it regularly enough. We've done it long enough that a lot of the answers do come pretty quickly and pretty automatically. But there are some that take some time to research. And, it's a good thing to do that. I mean, it helps us flex that muscle in our heads and prepares us for the next question. And, so that, it does take time, but it's worth it.
Now, a lot of the podcasters out there do this as a hobby. A lot of the Mac websites that we all like to go to is hobby. It's not the thing that we do full time. You, on the other hand, has made your career around this entire industry. So you've seen in the really bad days, and you see the really good days. Are you pessimistic about the future, or, Well, you tell me, what do you think is going to happen here in the future? We're in a recession. People are not buying expensive Macs, except they sold more than ever. Wait, that's not right, is it? I don't know how that works. How is it that we're in a recession and yet they're selling more Macs? That's not right.
Well, you know, I have to give credit to Pat Mahan for this answer, and I think he walked away. But he pointed out, he said, you know, in a recession, entertainment and then a couple other things like alcohol and that sort of thing do very well. And you know, if your entertainment for you is using your Mac or that sort of thing, well then you know you are gonna go out and invest in that. And in a recession, you're going to be very careful about the dollars you spend. You're going to make sure that you spend money on things that are quality, well made, and that are going to last for you and going to do what you want. You can't afford to replace your computer every 9 months, so you got to get something that you think is going to live with you for a while. And you know, when he just said that to me while I was, 5 minutes ago, I was standing there, and it was like, yeah, you know what, that makes good sense. So I'll give him credit for that.
I would also say that I think Apple has a reputation for making computers that last a long time. I can't tell you how many times I go to someone's house that's a Mac user, and it's like, really, a Bondi Blue iMac? And it's still working fine. It's usually full of dust because they don't vacuum the inside of it, but it's working great still. How often do you go over someone's house and see a 10-year-old Dell and it's still going well?
Well, it depends on what that Dell's doing. I mean, is it sitting there kind of taking up space on the floor? Yeah, that's right. No, you're right. They don't tend to have a useful life for most people. And part of that's the software, right? I mean, it gets virus ridden and you just get sick and tired of cleaning it out and the spyware and this, that, and the other thing. So I think that does contribute to the Mac's longevity because we don't have this scenario where, we need to reformat the drive every 12 months or need to do a, major cleaning that if you're not technologically savvy, you've got to pay a couple $100 to have that done. And, at some point, putting $200 worth of some consultant's time into your computer to get it to where it can be at its best is better spent buying a new machine. And so that's why those machines, I really do think that's why they don't last as long.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. TheMacObserver.com, one of my favorite websites. I get paid to podcasting now, which is nice. Hi, Grant. But I've always been conscious of what I say and not trying to push out too many opinions. But there's someone here who I think is fearless when it comes to podcasting. He's trying to hide back there. His name's Ken Ray. Come on over here, Ken. Come on, Ken. Does everybody know who Ken Ray is? Yes, of course. You're the big celebrity. Woo! Developers. Did I drop something there? No. Okay, that's good. You seem fearless. You seem to be the type of guy that you're going to give your opinion, whether it's the popular opinion or not, and you're willing to live by your words. Was this something that, started when you started the crack, or your parents kind of instilled this into you?
I don't think of myself as fearless at all.
I think you are.
Well, thanks. I don't really know how to respond to that, honestly. I mean, to me, it's sort of a news show, but I guess you're putting out an opinion just by what you choose to cover, right?
I think so.
That's all I can think of.
I think it's that, but when you're not afraid to say the unpopular opinion, and MacOS Ken, you've always been unafraid, from what I hear, of I think this is crap, and I'm going to say it's crap, and maybe you just lost a potential advertiser. Maybe someone wants to beat you up. Hi, Grant. No, I'm kidding. But how long have you been in macOS Ken now, and where do you go from here?
macOS Ken actually turned 4 last month. Turned 4 years old last month, and I was podcasting for somebody else for about a half a year before that. 1,000th show is sometime next month, I think. I'll have to go back and count. Thank you. Where do you go from here? I don't know, man. I mean, as long as it's still a tremendous amount of fun. I mean, it's turned into a job. So, not every day do you get up for any job and go, oh boy, I can't wait, every single day. But it's a tremendous amount of fun. And what you were talking about and what you and Chuck were talking about, people come up to you here and say, I love what you do. And you're like, really? Because it's pretty much me and the cat in the daytime, So it's really awesome to, it's really awesome to have that too.
Podcasting, we like to think of it as we've been doing it for a long time. Quite honestly, podcasting wasn't invented until 2004. Do you think of yourself as a pioneer in a new media movement? Because let's be honest, I know you don't want to pat yourself on the back too much, Ken. I'll do it for you. But you are a pioneer. This is a revolution in entertainment. This is combining television like Chuck's doing, audio, AE radio like you're doing. They get to listen to it on their terms, when they want, where they want. They're not tied to the TV. They're not tied to the radio dial. I think, maybe not an entire chapter, but people are going to be writing about what you've done 20 years from now, that this was a revolution. We're still in the midst of it, so it's a little bit hard to see it, but you are one of the forerunners of this new media revolution. Do you think that this is, number one, do you think I'm right? And number two, maybe not about the writing, because I know I'm right there, Ken. They're going to write about you. Or do you think that we're just at the cusp of this, and where do you think all this new media is going?
That's a great question. I don't think of myself as actually being on the forefront of it because I saw other people do it. There was Wizards of Technology with Bill Douthat. There was the MacCast. I mean, there are people who, it's weird to think about it that way because they were only, I think I started podcasting in May of 2005 for somebody else, and that's 6 months. That 6 months is a lot of time, man.
Well, yes. It was a lot of time. I started at the very end of 2004 with the MyMac.com podcast, which, by the way, Guy Searle and our absent, already on his way back to the UK, David Cohen, has graciously taken over that show. Thank you very much, Guy. I appreciate it. And you guys are doing a great job. So we have been doing this since the very beginning. Yes, not the 6 months. Adam Curry and Dave Weiner started this whole thing. But there really wasn't a lot of ground laid in those 6 months. You are a pioneer in how you record your show. Do you have any big plans coming up about coverage, what you're going to be talking about soon?
I do not. No, whatever the news is. I mean, you know, iPad. It's going to be iPad for who knows how long at this point, and then it'll be hopefully somewhere between now and when we get the iPad. It's kind of interesting, though. Do you think they're going to update the laptop line before they do the iPad? Because that seems like it might suck a little bit of the air and a little bit of the money out. But people are waiting for that to happen right now, an update to the Mac Pro. It's whatever happens. I mean, Chrome at the end of this year is going to go head-to-head with the iPad. And they don't look like the exact same thing, and they don't seem like the exact same thing. But they're both trying to take away the idea of the several $1,000 computer, right? Or even the $1,000 computer. So what's going to happen? Wait 5 minutes, and like, it's news. It just keeps happening.
Here's the thing. The iPad isn't for you, and the iPad isn't for me. We're power users. You can still have one. I'm not buying it, though. And Bill Palmer, it's not for you, and Grant, it's really not for you. Who the iPad is my mom. My mom is handicapped. She can't move her right arm or her left arm. She's scared to death of technology. She'll never buy a computer because the keyboard just freaks her out, and she can only use it with one hand. And when you really think about it, how do you mouse and type? And it's just too much for her. This is a device that we can set it up, and she can literally push buttons. I can buy prepaid 3G wireless coverage so she doesn't have another bill. It's relatively inexpensive. And I can start sending her email. More importantly, I can start sending her pictures. She can do stuff online. She can go to the Google, as she calls it. What is this, the Google? That's who that computer is for. And it's also going to be a way that they're going to be able to listen to you. You can finally start sharing your content with your parents generation, those kind of people. And I think that's where this whole new media thing that we've invented 4 years, well, what is it now, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 6 years ago that we invented, and we're just running with it. That's where it's going. That's the way we're going to get this content to that generation that's scared of technology even to this day. Except for him, he's not scared at all. Look at him. He's fearless. He's fearless. So do you think that's what the iPad's for?
Sure. Why not? I mean, the one thing when you talk about new media, though, I mean, everything gets so fractured. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to say, here's where we get to do this. I mean, Leo, for years, has railed about the fact that Apple sort of owns iTunes. I love the fact that Apple owns iTunes. That works for me in a huge way, and a lot of people that I know, too. So you kind of hope they win because at least there's one place that people can go. It is in iTunes at that point. It will be interesting to see as more tablet devices come on, as Google Chrome comes on, where does it go? I mean, the one thing it's interesting that the one thing that people are going to have to do is sort of readjust their idea of what success is. I'm really glad for Twit and what they've been able to do. Leo, 2 years ago at this show, or 3 years ago at this show, was saying there will never be anything to podcasting, there'll never be any money to it. Some podcasters have had to sort of readjust what their idea of success or whatever. I don't know. Where does it go? Dude, ask me again in a year. It could be completely different by then. I didn't think it would last for 4 years, so I'm okay.
Here's the weird thing for me. I was doing the independent thing for a long time with mymac.com, and now I'm doing this thing called OWC Radio. I've had to explain this to people because they think, okay, you're working with Otherworld Computing. They're a product vendor. So is your show nothing about, or is it your show only about their products? And I say, no, because nobody's going to download an infomercial. Nobody's going to download it. And I try to explain it's like having a show, but with just one advertiser.
It's like what I used to think years ago, and I really hope this will happen at some point. Texaco Star Theater. Milton Berle was not doing a show about Texaco. Texaco was the sponsor of the show, right? OWC is the sponsor of your show. I would, if anybody's listening, Coke Zero. I want Coke Zero. I want Coke Zero to present macOS Ken, because I've been to France and you can get Coke Zero everywhere there. There's no place that I go that they would not be a welcome advertiser. And I'd wear their T-shirt.
Everywhere. And you'd even drink the product.
I do drink the product. So yeah, absolutely. That's why I want them. That's why I'm not saying, yeah, I want Tab.
You don't want Tab. Nobody wants Tab. macOS Ken is this podcast. Thanks very much for coming up, Ken. Once again, before I close up here, if you haven't listened to OWC Radio, and guess what the URL is, it's pretty easy to figure out. We release a show once or twice a week. I like to do interviews, and when I do interviews, they're very similar to what I just did here, where it's not strictly questions and answers. We do this thing called This or That, where I give the guests an option. I could say black and white, and you have to say, oh, white. Why? Because my car is white. So I'm going to do a little bit of that with you guys sitting right here and over here. So I'm going to give you a choice, and you can elaborate on what it is. There's no right, no wrong answers. And I'm going to start, come here, I'm going to start with Neil Ticktin, MacTech magazine. Awesome magazine, by the way. You got some new things coming up. Can you announce anything yet, or is...
Yeah. So we have a couple things. We did a new MacTech website just this last weekend. And it has some news scanners built into it. So there's a news scanner, a rumor scanner, and a documentation scanner. And we're scanning some of the best websites out on the Mac and in the Apple market and bringing it so that people have one place that they can see stuff.
There, we're good.
Okay. Second thing we did was we announced this incredible, or released this incredibly full set of benchmarks on virtualization between VMware Fusion and Parallels Desktop 5, and did a big shootout between them, 3,500 tests, many of which with a stopwatch, looking at 3D graphics, games, the whole 9 yards, really cool stuff. That's up on the MacTech website right now that people can take a look at. And the third thing is we announced that we have a new brand called MacNews.com. And we've acquired the Maximum News website, and Dennis Sellers and his team.
No, that's one of my favorites. Don't ruin it.
He's coming over to Mac News.
Don't ruin it.
He's coming over to Mac News. You're going to love it. He's just sold good.
All right, good.
So when we launch, it's in preview right now, MacNews.com. And when we launch it, it will have 70,000 articles in the archives dating back to 1996. So a new name, 14-year heritage, and that's about it.
All right, let me do a quick this or that with you, and you can elaborate on the answer. Desktop. Oh, look, everyone's looking at my family photos, aren't they? Isn't she cute? Desktop or laptop?
I'm big on laptop, but I think the iPad's going to take a big piece of that.
Do you think? Okay, wait a minute then. Is the iPad more of a laptop or more of a desktop?
I think the iPad is a new category.
Is it?
I think that the iPad is going to be a place that people can consume media and all kinds of information, and to use it with this really innovative pointer called your finger. Yeah. And that instead of dealing with a pointing device like a trackpad or a mouse or whatever the case may be, they can do something in a much more natural way than they ever have. And there's certain things that are going to work much better on the iPad than work on a laptop or a desktop machine. And they're certainly going to work better than do on a mobile phone. And it's the in-between kind of category. And I think it's exactly what people are I think that's the way people will look at it.
But right now it's laptop for you.
Oh yeah, it's been a laptop for me for as long as I can remember.
You're on the go. You're a busy guy, Neil.
I just plug in a monitor when I'm at the other end, and there you go.
MacTech Magazine, awesome publication. Thanks a lot, Neil. All right, I'm going to ask you, chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Really? Not vanilla?
No.
So you're sticking with chocolate.
Yes.
Now, when I say chocolate or vanilla, what immediately comes to me? Are you thinking ice cream?
No.
You're not thinking hamburgers?
No. Okay,
I'm going to leave it at that then. You sure it's not vanilla? Okay. You got me again. I'm going to ask you, Safari or Firefox?
Safari.
Why? Because it comes with it, or have you tried Firefox, or is that just the one that you prefer?
I've tried Firefox. I don't understand it. It kind of confuses me, and it's just so easy to go back to Safari.
I agree with you. Safari is just, that's what I use, by the way. All right, a couple more. I want to ask Grant. Everyone wants to know. This is an important one, by the way, and this is going in the podcast for sure. You ready? Boxers or briefs?
Briefs all the way, baby.
Thought he was going to say commando. All right, Bill Palmer. Never mind. I don't want to know. So my name is Tim Robertson. Please check out www.OWC Radio. It's a free podcast. Comes out once or twice a week. You can find it in iTunes. We also have OWC TV, which is installation video. So if you have a Mac, a desktop, a new one, an old one, a desktop, a laptop, in iTunes, if you want to upgrade your memory, your hard drive, we provide free, that's right, F-R-E-E, free installation videos. You can download them at your convenience. Just check them out on iTunes. Thanks a lot for being here. Appreciate it.
MacVoices TV at Macworld 2010 is sponsored by Smile on My Mac, the makers of great productivity software like PDF Pen, Text Expander, and Disk Label. Visit them at smileonmymac.com. MacVoices TV is part of the MacVoices Group and a member of Mac Level 10.